Good morning and welcome to the channel. This is part 3 of a 4-part series I'm doing on how to mud. In the first video, I gave a brief overview and explanation of what we're trying to achieve, showing each step 1, 2, and 3. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. In last video, I did the first coat of mud, which I did in red. And in today's video, we're doing the second coat of mud, which I'll be doing in blue. I'm using different colors of mud in hopes to give you a better visual of the first, second, and third coat. Sometimes it's a little difficult to see white mud going onto a white wall, let alone separating steps 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully this will be a better visual for you. In the third and final coat, I'll be using just regular white mud, but in today's video, it's blue mud for our second coat of mud. Let's get going. Okay, to get you caught up about where we left off in the first video, we applied our entire first coat of mud, which meant embedding all our tape on the seams, the inside corners, and using a corner bead for our outside corner, as well as an off-angle outside corner, which is up there, as well as doing our screw heads. So go check out that first coat of mud if you're interested to see the full process of that. The only thing you need to know for this video is that we did do part of our second coat. When we did our inside corners, we covered one side of the tape, which is technically part of our second coat. But now that it's dry, we can go ahead and do our second coat and cover that other side of tape. So that's what we'll start with, is the inside corners. So the first thing we do before we put mud on the wall in the area we're working in, we just knock off any high points, any clumps of mud. Because if you don't do that, you'll ride on top of it with your knife and you'll create a ridge. So you could clean up the whole area at once or just do it as you go. So to begin our inside corners, I'll start at the top, which is a 3-way corner. First I get my 4-inch knife, which is what I'll be using to do my second coat on the inside corners. I go in there and clean up the corner because sometimes there's dried mud that get in the way of making a nice crisp corner. Just go softly in, clean it out so it's nice and clean, and then get some mud on my knife, just like I did in the other video. And in the same motion and application, start in the corner and pull. Again, I'm riding this edge of the knife against this wall, getting right into the corner. And again, practice makes perfect in terms of actually putting the mud on your knife even and applying it onto the wall. This is how I hold it. And then I just twist my wrist depending on where I want to put the pressure on my knife. So for an inside corner, I want the far edge that's in contact with the drywall, I want that to be tight, and the other edge to float a little bit on the inside corner. And by doing that, I'm creating a taper because the goal is to cover my tape, but you obviously don't want to make a hump. I'm going to clean up my edges, and that's my second coat. You'll notice these clumps of mud. I can either clean them up right away, but I want to be careful I don't go into my freshly laid mud. So if you're not confident to go into that corner, just leave it alone. It will knock off easy once it dries, and you'll cause more issues trying to clean that up if you do start rubbing into your wet mud. So that was pretty easy and quick. It goes a lot faster than the first coat because the first coat you're dealing with embedding that tape. The second coat for your inside corners, you're only doing the other side, and it's all good to go. Again, I'm knocking off any dried clumps that are going to interfere with this coat. And really I can focus on just putting the mud in the corner and then pulling it straight after. Cleaning up that inside corner, making it nice and crisp. And again, a little more pressure on the corner of my knife that makes contact with the drywall so I can feather it out nicely. Cleaning up my edge. And again, try and avoid playing with your mud a little too much. As you drag it across the drywall, it begins to dry a little quicker. So once you start dragging that dry mud in the fresh wet mud, it becomes a mess pretty quickly. So if you think you've wrecked it and it looks terrible, either clean it up right away and try and scrape all that mud off, or if it's not too bad, it's a thin coat, just leave it and fix it with your next coat. Because remember, applying wet mud is easy, but removing dry mud is hard and annoying. And this is only the second coat, so on that inside corner, our third and final coat, we'll water down the mud so it spreads nice and easily, and we'll do a nice pull to fill in any imperfections. Cleaning off those clumps. I put a little more mud where it's going to be riding against the inside corner, keeping the one side tight against my inside corner and the other side a little more pressed against the drywall. And then this edge, I want to make sure I clean up because mud will have a tendency of building up on that ridge and it's quite difficult to sand. Just like that, another inside corner is done. So I've done this inside corner and I'm gonna start the off angle before I do this because my mud is still wet up here. So it'll be nice to do it so I'm not, again, dealing with mud that's beginning to dry and making a mess. And I can do this outside corner after because it doesn't interfere with anything. So to do the outside off angle, according to the manufacturer, this would be done now with this first and second coat that I have done on it already. But I was a little sparse with the mud, so I'm going to go over it again, just a little tighter. But still staying off the actual corner of it. They want that to be exposed. So I knock off my high points, stay back from this corner. Clean up my edge and basically carry on. Just like that, and I'll do the other side as well. So now I'm going to do this inside corner where it runs into the wet mud I just laid down. This is where a little pre-planning does come in helpful, so you're not running into mud that's already half dry. And this inside corner is done. I'll try and give you a close-up. So that's the complete second coat done on the inside corners and the off angle. Now I'll move towards my outside corners, my 90-degree corners. So just like the off angle, the second coat is technically applied to this outside angle as well. But because there's so much mud on that corner, when it dries, it tends to show more defects and distorts the outside corner a little bit depending. So we'll still go over it tightly with the blue mud. I'll consider that my second coat. So again, I clean off any high points, clumps of mud or anything that might interfere. You can actually see how much the mud has shrunk. Don't know if the camera will pick up on it or not, but there's a screw divots and you can see the paper even. So that's why I'm going to do another coat. So I'm using a wider knife, 5-inch knife. Unlike the off angle, there's actually a little high point, a bead on the outside of that angle. So it's meant to create a value to fill in. So I want to be a little mindful that there is wet mud on the ceiling I just did. So I just go into this corner a little more carefully, pull it tight, clean up my edge, and then I can do my second side right away as well. Clean off my edges. I'll do this flat right away too. Again, because this mud is wet still, I can fix any defects that I create. So for the flat, I use my 14-inch curve. Probably can't see the curve on it, but there's a slight dip in it. Again, there are different methods of doing the flats and inside corners, even the outside corners. I explain a bit of it in that first video, so go check it out if you want to know different ways. So with the 14-inch curve, I have created a bit of a hump in the middle. The mud will shrink as it dries out a little bit because there's moisture in it, so when the moisture evaporates, it will shrink a little bit. Hopefully there's still a slight hump where I'll go back with a 14-inch flat trowel and go from the center of the hump to wherever it meets the drywall on either side and feather it out and fill in any imperfections that way. That's how you do a flat. I should have done this one sooner than later because you can already see that my mud is beginning to dry where it's more thin. Where the mud is white, that's where it's begun to dry already. So I'll try and get a coat on this flat. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're doing that third coat to fill in imperfections. Let's go into the closet and do the big flat that we did before. So again, for the flat, I'll go over it with the 14-inch curve. Get lots of mud on my trowel. And then I'll do my inside corner. Just like that. So all that I have left to do are the screw heads. Pretty much the same application as before. Like so. And wipe it off like so. Okay, that will do it for the second coat of mud. The next video will be the fourth video where we do the final coat of mud So if you want to get notified for when that comes out, make sure you subscribe to follow along. And if you're interested in this cottage build that we're doing, there's a playlist dedicated to that as well, so go check that out if you're interested. But as for this one, that's going to do it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. That couldn't have come at a better timing because I just broke my knife.